Hey everybody, Grumbles here with some more War Thunder footage. So, this time I thought I'd try flying twin-engine fighters for a bit. I have not flown them a lot before, since, as you may know if you watched my videos before, I only recently started playing historic battle mode, and in arcade with direct control, most twins are pretty unstable. But since I do not have this problem in historic, I decided to take a look at a few planes that I have barely ever used before. In this case, the Messerschmitt BF-110 and the controversial Bristol Beaufighter Mark 6C. Let's start with the BF-110, a German twin-engine heavy fighter at Tier 4. Now, I play those planes in an air-to-air role, and as expected, you have to play the 110 a lot more careful than a single-engine plane. It is not very fast, and as you would expect from a heavy twin-engine plane, not very maneuverable. Climb rate and dive speed seem to be okay though, for a plane on this level. Now, the big plus of a heavy fighter is usually its heavy weaponry. On that front, the 110 has 4 rifle caliber machine guns and 2 MGFF 20mm cannons, not the strongest cannons around. At first look, that armament looks similar to that of a 109E3 plus 2 machine guns, but there are of course 2 advantages the 110 has here. First, the weapons are all focused in the nose, so convergence is not an issue. Secondly, the 110C3 has a newer version of the MGFF that can fire the so-called Minengeschoss high explosive round. The older model weapons in the 109E3 cannot do that. Now let's take a look at a few engagements from this round on Operation Ruhr. I have picked that one because it starts with a nice example on what not to do in a BF-110. It starts pretty promising. A low-level brawl has developed below, and I appear to be the highest fighter around. A great opportunity to fly in, do a quick flyby attack, and then use the speed gained from the shallow dive to get some separation and climb again. But after attacking a B-40, I decide, in a lapse of judgment, that the B-36 presents a nice target too, and I try to get a shot at him too in a turn. A critical and also quite obvious mistake that cost me the speed I wanted to get away from the furball. Thankfully, with the help of the tail gun, the plane's ruggedness and some luck, I managed to get away eventually and return to the airfield to repair. More than you can ask for after such an obvious mistake. However, after returning to the scene from the airbase, I am the last one of my team still flying. The opponents have a P-40, a Buffalo, a Catalina, and for some reason a pea-shooter in the air. I could see the P-40's ready for action message though, so I know he will still need some time before he is back. I have a nice altitude advantage over the Buffalo, so that is a good chance to even the odds a bit before the P-40 is back. The pea-shooter is also in the area, but for obvious reasons he is not worrying me a whole lot. After climbing a bit to make sure the Buffalo can't reach me, I come around and, as I usually like to do with an altitude advantage, attack from above and behind. This is where the focused armament of the BF-110 shines. Especially at closer ranges, the 4 machine guns and 2 cannons are able to dish out a nice amount of damage. The pea-shooter takes the chance to get on my tail, but it is of course rather unlikely that this reserve plane manages to do enough damage in time on a twin-engine plane. And the tail gunner takes care of this problem without too much effort. Now, the Catalina is nearby attacking ground targets, and I of course don't want to lose the match by losing all my ground forces. This is also a good opportunity for the BF-110 to do what it is really good at: hunt slow flying bombers. A strong burst in the tail will usually get rid of the elevator, and seeing all those parts fall off a big target while shooting it is a rewarding feeling. While attacking the Catalina, one of my guns jammed and I take a few hits from the rear gunners, so I decide to head back and repair. Around this time someone in chat asks me why I don't attack ground targets, and the reason for that is because the B-40 is still around. I don't wanna be caught by him low and slow while attacking ground targets. As a matter of fact, I hope the opposite will be the case, and he starts attacking ground targets while I repair, and I get the chance to gain an altitude advantage over him. However, once I start to climb away from the battle to gain altitude, he is already waiting and decides to attack me within range of the airbase AA. So all I have to do is evade a bit and the AAA finishes the last aircraft on the enemy team off. Now the engagements of the next round I will show you will have a little bit higher tier opposition. It starts off with a little bit of defensive flying. I get a few butt shots on a passing Su-2, but he is relatively fast and I can't catch up to him. So I just want to dive and get a little bit of separation from the battle to return with an altitude advantage. When I notice a 9T attacking a M410 and I want to help out. I have however failed to notice that the 9T has already switched targets and is coming for me instead. So I am suddenly in the dogfight versus a more agile and faster Yak-9T. Luckily there are friendly planes as well as AAA around, so I figured the best course of action is to stay defensive and avoid his fire till a friendly unit picks him off. I keep up a relatively mediocre turn until I see he is about to get the lead he needs to fire. Then I tighten up the turn and use the rudder to get the nose down. Getting the nose down does two things. It gives me an additional axis on which my flight path changes, and it lets me trade some altitude for speed, which I need to keep a bit of maneuverability up. Of course, not being very high to begin with, I can't do that for very long. Luckily, the AA gets him before I run out of altitude, and I climb back up and look for another opportunity to do some damage, which comes shortly after when the LA-5 passes me and attacks some of my teammates. I was the highest plane on my team at this point, but the LA-5 either did not see me or assumed my 110 was no threat. He pulls up in a loop once he sees me, giving me an opportunity for a deflection shot. Now after that, the enemy team has only a Yak-7B and a MiG-3 left, which go back to the airbase to rearm. Our MA-410 gets shot down by AA. That leaves us with a BF-109, a MC-202, which also go back to base, and my BF-110. Since I do not need to go back, I decide to gain altitude and track the enemy fighters when they come back, hoping for an opportunity to attack from above. Once the Yak-7B and MiG-3 return, they spot me and try to climb up to me. My two friendlies are still at base, but this is still a good opportunity for me to attack. I decide to go for the Yak-7B because it is heavier armed, and I want to either dive or climb away after my pass. After checking what the MiG-3 does, it looks in the first second like I can outclimb him, but I soon realize that I do not have the speed for it, and I dive away instead, toward my teammates that are now coming back from the base. This is where the decision to go for the Yak-7 instead of the MiG-3 pays off. The MiG-3 is simply not very well armed. Taking a few hits from the MiG is not as big of a problem than the Yak's 20mm cannon would have been. Now, with my two teammates showing up, the rest of this fight is a formality. Well, after a few rounds in the BF-110, I have to say I had a pretty fun time with the plane so far. But it of course needs to be flown rather careful. It is not maneuverable and not very fast either. You really want to have an altitude advantage when attacking other fighters. However, that is also the reason why it is more gratifying coming out of a match with a few air kills in a BF-110 than in most other fighters. And one has to keep in mind that the plane, while it was designed as a heavy long-range escort fighter, never performed very well in this role. The designers hoped the tailgun and heavy armament would make up for the lack of maneuverability and speed, but of course that was not true. One problem that is mentioned a lot concerning the BF-110 in War Thunder right now is its very bad energy retention, and it most certainly bleeds energy a lot. Here I have to say though, I simply do not know enough about this particular plane and the flight model to tell if it bleeds more energy than it should or not. Also, with its armament, the plane of course performs well in an anti-bomber role, but I figured that a video about bomber kills might not be too interesting, so I focused on fighter kills. Well, that's the BF-110 footage for this video. I think I might fly this plane a bit more often though from now on, and maybe I have some more footage of it in the future. Let's take a short look at the Tier 5 Bristol Beaufighter for comparison. I assume most of you will not be surprised when I tell you the Beaufighter is currently the much stronger airplane, especially in the air-to-air role. It has very good armament, with 4 20mm cannons focused in the fuselage, a great climb rate for a Tier 5 plane, and also the ability to pull out of dives with very high G-loads without breaking wings. But what really surprised me about the plane was how maneuverable it is, even though I have read about it on the forums. I would go as far as to say it compares in horizontal maneuverability to single-engine fighters like the F4F-3 Wildcat. So on this front, the plane is certainly performing better than it should. I think there are a few factors that might be part of the reason why this is the case. First of all, I assume, and this is just a guess mind you, that the plane is missing some of its weight. Maybe there was a mix-up between empty weight and takeoff weight. The other factors are a bit more complicated because they are hard to integrate into a game. Like how hard it would be for the pilot to move the control surfaces on the plane. The Beaufighter has pretty big control surfaces, and of course the more you pull on them, the more drag they create, and the harder it is to pull them further. But this is probably hard to incorporate into the game. Also a factor, structural strength of the airplane. Currently in historic battles you can snap a wing while overspeeding, but not on lower speeds. That is not much of a problem for most single-engine fighters, but it means that certain multi-engine planes are able to do maneuvers that their structural strengths would not have allowed. Like the SP-2 bomber for example, which also turns exceptionally well. That one has a very large wing and is pretty light for a plane that size, So purely from an aerodynamic point of view, it might be able to turn as well as in War Thunder. But a plane built this light from the mid-30s would have never been able to withstand the maneuvers structurally. It would have broken apart. But again, this is hard to put in the game properly. Without the feedback from actual G-forces and the control surfaces, it would be very hard to tell for people when they reach this point in the heat of a battle. It is already pretty easy to break a wing on certain planes when diving. So getting the performance of planes, especially multi-engine ones, right, is not so easy, I would assume. Well, those were a few thoughts on twin-engine planes. This brings this video to an end. I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I see you next time.